What is going on, everybody? It's Cameron and we are finally returning to the Invincible Iron Man series. This is issue 7 and that is what we're going to be reviewing today. So if you remember in the previous issue, towards the end, Iron Man actually offered Mary Jane a job because her nightclub burnt down again. And when I say again, basically what happened is, in the Superior Spider-Man series about 2 years ago, Mary Jane had a nightclub, it got burnt down. Then at the end of the Superior Spider-Man series, she moved out of the city, opened up her new nightclub, and then in the previous issue of this series, it got burnt down again. So she's kind of sick of having nightclubs now, because they keep getting burnt down, and so she's going to take up this offer with Iron Man, and potentially work for Tony Stark. Now it's been a while since I've reviewed this series, so I cannot wait to get back into it, so without further ado guys, let's jump into it. Okay, so if you remember in the previous issue, I mentioned how I didn't really like the art style recently. We've actually got into this new saga of this series, and the art style went from being incredibly good to this more mushed together art style, which I'm not too fond of, but I'm sure we'll probably go back to the original art style within the next few issues, hopefully. Now, as for the characters in this issue, mainly focusing on Tony Stark and Mary Jane, I absolutely love the interaction between them two, just how they kind of bounce off each other, because Tony Stark is that smug guy, you know, the one that kind of tells jokes, thinks he's the best, he's got a huge ego, and Mary Jane just seems to, I wouldn't say prove him wrong, but surprise him, because obviously we've all known Mary Jane for years, we know what her character's like, we know that she's not just some hot redhead, and I just love the reactions that Tony Stark gives to Mary Jane when she actually does surprise him. Even the conversations between the two characters are very intellectual in terms of the witty comebacks that happen, and just reading about these two characters on the panels is awesome. I can't exactly think of the right words to describe it, but it's the fact that Mary Jane doesn't necessarily care that Tony Stark is Tony Stark. She's just being herself, you know, she's not holding back, she's telling him that he was 40 minutes late, and she's basically just not taking any messing from him at all, and I think this is what Tony Stark needs to sort of straighten him out, and it's really awesome. I actually can't get over it, it's just so good to read. It also makes me look forward to the future of this series if Mary Jane is going to stay within this series, because it seems she's bringing a fresh element to the character of not only Tony Stark, as I've already said, but the entire series as a whole. Now, something that I noticed about F.R.I.D.A.Y is that although she's created by Tony Stark, she has a huge ego as well. Almost like she knows she's better than the human race, she'll live longer, she can probably control the world. And I love how Mary Jane just said artificial intelligence should definitely not be talking about controlling the world, because obviously Terminator and all that crazy stuff. And I get a little bit of a feeling that maybe F.R.I.D.A.Y and Mary Jane are going to be competing with each other. So say maybe Mary Jane will want to run the company this way, and F.R.I.D.A.Y will just be sorry, but that's not going to happen. So I kind of want to see a little bit of conflict between F.R.I.D.A.Y and Mary Jane, just because they're kind of, you know, the only two girls this close to Tony Stark, really. Anyway, moving on with the comic, one of the things that you guys probably didn't know is that Tony Stark in this series doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And when I say in this series, I mean in the all-new, all-different universe, or the Amazing Spider-Man, the Invincible Iron Man, Civil War, etc. like that. And that's why it's such a surprise when Tony Stark hears that Mary Jane has Peter Parker's private number. And obviously, Mary Jane used to date Peter Parker, and I love it how Mary Jane doesn't actually acknowledge that. She kind of avoids the question of how she actually got the number, and the best part is that Spider-Man actually went out there looking for Rhodey. And the reason why it's such a surprise is because in the recent Amazing Spider-Man comics, Tony Stark and Peter Parker actually fight each other in their Spider-Man and Iron Man costumes. So it's nice to see that even though they don't get along, when it comes to an emergency like this, they still work together. Also, by the way, I'd really quickly like to point out that I think that artwork on Spider-Man is phenomenal. I mean, it is just so awesome. I love the costume design, I love the eyes, I love the blue spider. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be green, but for some reason it's blue in every other comic series. But either way, it looks so good, and I kind of wish the Spider-Man comics looks like that all the time. It's a nice change, and it very much reminded me of the One More Day saga artwork. You know, with the big webbing and all that crazy stuff. Now, coming up to the final few pages of this comic, we're actually discovering that Rhodey has been kidnapped, and if you remember in the previous issue towards the end, he was facing off against these two ninja girls or something like that. They seem pretty crazy, and it seems he's been taken hostage. I'm going to have to mention that I specifically love the dialogue between Rhodey and whoever this random woman is. You know, how Rhodey kind of says, "Oh good, so you know that you've just kidnapped a military forces officer," or something like that. And it's just really cool how Rhodey is very calm in this situation, he seems very collected of himself. And that is until the girl starts using these random powers that just dismantle the armor from around Rhodey, and it just lands on her, and you're kind of just Rhodey, you shouldn't have been so cocky, because he's pretty much screwed right now. It's also about the anticipation that the comic puts across to the reader, knowing that Tony Stark is racing to get to Rhodey and find him before he actually gets killed. So to know that in the background Tony Stark is trying to get there just makes the comic feel a little bit more exhilarating, and it kind of feels like Rhoda is in a much more serious situation. Now guys, I would like to mention really quickly that obviously Civil War 2 issue 1 has released, and in that issue we have both characters, Tony Stark and Rhodey. Now so that none of you guys are confused, Tony Stark and Rhodey that are in Civil War 2 are the same characters that we are reading about in this series right now. And if you've read Civil War 2 issue 1, because obviously I've already reviewed it, then you'll know that something happens to Rhodey, so yeah, go check that out if you haven't seen my review. But anyway guys, back to the comic on the screen. It has just ended. That is the end of the issue, and of course towards the end there we got some girl at a university making some armor, or it seemed like it anyway, so maybe she's going to be able to help Tony Stark get Rhodey back or something along those lines. We're going to have to wait and see. But until then guys, I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10. Mary Jane's interaction with Tony Stark was amazing. I loved it. Some of the witty comebacks and surprising Tony Stark like that is just so into Mary Jane's character, it's brilliant. And even though the art style still hasn't grown on me, I did like the art style on Spider-Man, even though he was only in it for a few pages. But anyway guys, that is the end of this review. What did you think? Let me know in the comment section below. And you can follow me on Twitter to stay up to date on my videos, see what's going up next, and of course look out for comic code giveaways on my Twitter as well. The link is in the description. And whilst you're there, you can follow me on my Facebook page to stay up to date on all the latest in comic book news and updates. And if you like what you see, if you like these videos, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in my next video.